Can you imagine an American spy standing on a busy Pakistani street, pulling out a gun and firing deadly shots in broad daylight? Can you imagine the shock that ripples through the crowd, the panic that spreads like fire, and the disbelief that grips an entire city? Can you imagine how one moment of violence turns into a storm that shakes two nations, two governments, and two intelligence agencies? Lahore had seen chaos before, but nothing prepared it for the day Raymond Davis stepped into history with a trigger pull. No alarms, no warnings, and no hesitation. Just a sudden burst of gunfire that transformed an ordinary intersection into a battlefield. Within seconds, two men lay dead on the road, and within minutes, Pakistan found itself pushed into a crisis it never expected. What followed wasn't just outrage, it was a national eruption, a wave of anger that united people across streets, screens, and cities. Every headline screamed betrayal, every voice demanded answers, and every question pointed toward the growing shadow of foreign interference. The name Raymond Davis flooded TV channels, radio stations, and newspapers until it felt like the entire country was speaking his name. Behind the scenes, a silent war ignited. A war not fought with bullets, but with secrets, pressure, and political power. The CIA and ISI locked into a tense standoff, each hiding truths, each protecting interests, each fighting a battle the world could not see. Every hour intensified the conflict, pushing diplomacy to its limits and dragging both nations deeper into the storm. And in the middle of this storm stood one man, a contractor, a spy, a symbol of a conflict far bigger than any gunfight on a street. A man whose actions triggered crisis, controversy, and confrontation, forcing both nations to face questions they were never ready to answer. This is the story of how a single moment in Lahore became one of the most explosive chapters in U.S.-Pakistan history. Raymond Allen Davis was not an ordinary American. He was a former U.S. Special Forces operative shaped by years of tactical training and battlefield instinct. He carried the discipline of a soldier, the awareness of a spy, and the precision of a man who had survived situations most people could never imagine. Behind his calm appearance lived a lifetime of operations, missions, and secrets that rarely fit into the title of technical advisor. After leaving official military service, he shifted into the shadow world of private security, a world where governments hire men they cannot officially name. These contractors moved in silence, handled sensitive missions, and stepped into danger zones where diplomats could not go and soldiers could not be seen. They operated between the lines of law and secrecy, doing the kind of work that comes with high risk, high stakes, and zero public recognition. The U.S. often relied on such men, using them as the invisible hands of intelligence operations that needed flexibility, deniability, and skill. They blended into foreign streets like ghosts, gathering information, tracking threats, and studying environments with eyes trained for danger. They watched quietly, acted only when necessary, and carried responsibilities hidden under layers of paperwork that told nothing of their real purpose. In Pakistan, Davis lived under the polite cover of a U.S. consulate employee, supposedly offering routine security assistance and logistical support. But his movements, his gear, and his routes through the city painted a very different picture to Pakistan's security agencies watching from the shadows. To analysts and investigators, he looked less like a technician and more like a man conducting surveillance, mapping networks, and observing targets. Though never openly acknowledged, most intelligence experts agree that Davis's mission reached far deeper than his official title ever suggested. They believe he was part of a CIA-linked surveillance unit operating quietly in the region, tracking extremist elements and monitoring hidden connections. And in that silent mission, hidden from headlines and concealed behind diplomatic doors, Raymond Davis stepped into a world where one mistake can ignite a crisis. Pakistan at the time was walking a tightrope between rising public anger, relentless drone strikes, and the strategic weight of U.S. partnership. The relationship between both nations was functional but fragile, held together by necessity rather than trust or shared confidence. One wrong move, one public mistake, and those thin diplomatic threads could snap, turning silent tensions into open confrontation. Security agencies in Pakistan were constantly fighting a battle on two fronts, managing internal politics while responding to American demands. Every encounter involving U.S. personnel carried enormous scrutiny, as the nation's mood was sharp, emotional, and ready to erupt. In such a climate, even the smallest miscalculation could trigger protests, controversies, or full-blown diplomatic crises. This was the dangerous environment in which Raymond Davis operated, a landscape where every step had consequences far beyond the street. He moved through a country watching him closely, a country where people were tired of foreign pressure and suspicious of hidden agendas. One mistake was all it would take for quiet intelligence work to explode into a national firestorm, and that moment came sooner than anyone expected. Across the region, both ISI and CIA were expanding their operations, often crossing paths in the same neighborhoods in the same shadows. Miscommunication could turn into mistrust, mistrust could turn into panic, and panic could turn into violence that neither side could control. It was a world where silence was deadly, secrets were dangerous, and misunderstandings could reshape international politics overnight. And in this charged, volatile atmosphere, the dramatic events of January 27, 2011 unfolded. Events that would shake Pakistan, shock the world, and ignite a diplomatic battle unlike anything seen before. A moment that began with a simple drive through Lahore and ended with two nations standing on the edge of a crisis. A moment that would turn the name Raymond Davis into one of the most explosive chapters in U.S.-Pakistan history. On that fateful day, Davis drove through one of Lahore's crowded streets, eyes scanning every angle, senses sharpened by years of training. Every vehicle, every face, every movement was measured with caution, as if he expected trouble to emerge from any corner. And then, two young men on a motorcycle appeared behind him, Faizan Haider and Fahim Shamshad, following too closely to ignore. What happened next remains one of the most debated moments in the entire case, a moment wrapped in claims, counterclaims, and unanswered questions. Davis would later insist they were armed, that they intended to rob him, and that he acted only to protect his own life. But in the heat of that moment, on that busy road, no one knew the truth, only that the situation was seconds away from exploding. At a traffic signal, Davis made his move with the precision of a trained operative, stepping out of his vehicle with cold, controlled focus. He drew his Glock in one smooth motion, firing multiple rounds with the kind of accuracy that only comes from battlefield experience. Within moments, both men collapsed onto the asphalt, and the street transformed into chaos as people screamed and fled in panic. Traffic froze, crowds gathered, and fear spread through the intersection like shockwaves, turning the scene into a storm of confusion. Davis scanned the area, checking angles, watching the crowd, and calling for backup with the calmness of a man who had done this before. To the stunned onlookers, it felt unreal, like a scene ripped from a spy thriller playing out in the middle of their city. Within minutes, a rescue vehicle from the U.S. consulate thundered toward the scene, weaving recklessly through the crowded Lahore streets. In its desperate attempt to reach Davis, it struck and killed another Pakistani citizen, adding fuel to an already raging fire. What began as a shooting had now turned into a tragedy multiplied, a crisis that would ignite national anger and international confrontation. Pakistani police quickly surrounded Raymond Davis, detaining him despite his repeated claims of diplomatic immunity, and despite urgent calls from U.S. officials demanding his immediate protection. He was taken to a nearby police station, processed under heavy security, and placed in custody as crowds outside swelled in anger, demanding instant justice for what they believed was an open and shut crime. Within hours, the situation intensified dramatically as every major media outlet broadcast the incident nationwide, fueling public outrage, political pressure, and a deep wave of suspicion that spread across the country. As investigators dug deeper, the discovery of multiple cell phones, dozens of live ammunition rounds, and unusually advanced equipment in Davis's possession raised even more troubling questions, pushing the case far beyond a simple act of self-defense. Authorities began to wonder why a man listed as a technical advisor carried tactical tools and covert-style gear more suited for intelligence operatives than ordinary embassy staff. Rumors exploded across the public sphere, reshaping opinions and dominating headlines long before any official explanation could catch up, leaving the entire nation divided and restless. Meanwhile, the U.S. government stood firm, insisting that Davis was a fully accredited diplomat protected under the Vienna Convention, and therefore must be released immediately without further delay. Pakistan, facing massive public pressure, political backlash, and nationwide protests, refused to accept the American claim without a complete verification of Davis's true role and mission in the country. It marked the beginning of a tense diplomatic standoff, one unlike anything the two nations had confronted in years, creating a crisis that tested political alliances, public trust, and the fragile balance between sovereignty and international law. Pakistani news channels quickly transformed the incident into a national debate, questioning foreign involvement, intelligence activities, and the true purpose of Raymond Davis's presence in the country. Headlines portrayed him as a shadowy figure operating secretly, a spy moving freely without oversight, and a direct violation of Pakistan's sovereignty and national dignity. Public anger surged across the nation, turning the case into a fiery symbol of pride, justice, and resistance against external pressure, creating a narrative far bigger than the event itself. Crowds gathered outside police stations and courtrooms, chanting slogans, waving posters, and demanding strict accountability from authorities despite ongoing diplomatic claims. Every detail of the case was dissected live on television, every statement scrutinized intensely, and every rumor magnified by talk shows desperate for ratings and public engagement. The atmosphere grew increasingly charged and emotional, evolving into a highly unstable political environment that made smooth diplomatic negotiations nearly impossible for both governments. In the United States, officials expressed rising concern, frustration, and urgency, repeatedly emphasizing the need to protect Davis's safety and resolve the crisis without further delay. The case dominated discussions in Washington, sparking fears of jeopardizing a crucial intelligence partnership and destabilizing already fragile counterterrorism cooperation with Pakistan. Behind closed doors, tensions escalated sharply as the CIA and ISI confronted each other with accusations, suspicions, and firm demands, revealing deep fractures that had long been hidden beneath formal alliances. Many believe Davis was gathering intelligence on extremist networks, quietly monitoring individuals and communication patterns connected to groups operating across Punjab. His specialized equipment suggested surveillance work rather than administrative duties, placing him firmly within the shadows of intelligence circles instead of any routine diplomatic role. Although the United States never officially confirmed this, the pattern of his tools, movements, and assignments matched typical contractor missions often seen in high-risk international regions. Pakistan's intelligence community, already frustrated by widening gaps with the CIA, viewed the incident as a major violation of operational trust and mutual understanding. Tensions had been steadily rising over drone strikes, covert missions, and the lack of transparent communication between the two agencies, creating a climate of suspicion and resentment. The Raymond Davis case became a powerful flashpoint, dragging simmering disagreements into the public eye and forcing both sides into defensive and politically charged positions. Some analysts suggested Davis had been tracking individuals connected to militant networks, possibly unaware that Pakistani surveillance teams were monitoring him at the same time. Others theorized he was part of a separate U.S. intelligence operation, one not fully coordinated with or disclosed to Pakistani counterparts, creating dangerous misalignment on the ground. Regardless of which version was closest to reality, his presence in Lahore placed both intelligence communities in a difficult, sensitive, and increasingly explosive situation. The U.S. government immediately launched a forceful campaign, insisting that Davis held full diplomatic immunity under international law, and that he must be released without delay. American officials warned of severe consequences for bilateral relations if Pakistan hesitated or questioned his status, escalating tensions at every level. Daily news reports captured the growing pressure, highlighting heated exchanges, urgent negotiations, and the stakes that neither side could afford to ignore. Pakistan, however, faced immense domestic pressure, as the public demanded justice for the deaths of the 3 Pakistani men, refusing to accept diplomatic claims over accountability. Leaders feared widespread protests, political upheaval, and damage to their credibility if Davis were allowed to walk free without proper legal proceedings. The courts became the focal point of the crisis, tasked with deciding the fate of a man trapped between the conflicting powers of 2 nations. Weeks passed with no resolution in sight, while backdoor negotiations tried desperately to prevent a full diplomatic breakdown, balancing law, politics, and public outrage. Meetings between CIA and ISI officials grew tense, emotional, and confrontational, revealing layers of mistrust that had built up over years of covert operations. Both sides leveled accusations of miscommunication, secret agendas, and irresponsible behavior, turning what began as a local incident into a full-blown international standoff. Eventually, discussions turned to the Islamic legal principle of diyat, a centuries-old system allowing the families of victims to forgive an offender in exchange for financial compensation. This path offered Pakistan a way to uphold legal and religious traditions, respect public sentiment, and avoid the political fallout of releasing Davis without justification. For the United States, it became a pragmatic solution, allowing them to rescue an intelligence asset without admitting wrongdoing or compromising delicate diplomatic positions. Negotiations were complex, involving layers of participants including lawyers, intelligence officers, community leaders, and intermediaries trusted to reach the families of the victims. The process was delicate, secretive, and meticulously monitored by both governments to prevent any leaks that could inflame public opinion or jeopardize the fragile agreement. Every conversation, every document, and every proposal was scrutinized to maintain secrecy and ensure that the outcome would satisfy both legal and diplomatic requirements. Over time, the families agreed to accept compensation, formally forgiving Davis under Islamic law, a decision that balanced justice, tradition, and political realities. Reports later indicated that the United States paid approximately $2.3 million to the victims' families, though exact figures were never officially confirmed and remain the subject of debate. The agreement was then presented in court, where the families signed formal statements acknowledging their forgiveness, bringing closure to a legal process fraught with tension and uncertainty. Legally, the moment the judge accepted the forgiveness and the diyat payment, the case was concluded, and Davis's release was ordered without further delay. Within hours, arrangements were made to ensure his safe extraction from the country, as security teams prepared to escort him to an awaiting U.S. aircraft. What began as a violent confrontation on the streets of Lahore ended with a resolution that balanced law, diplomacy, and secrecy, yet left the nation grappling with anger, suspicion, and lingering questions about foreign intelligence operations on its soil. Within minutes of the court's decision, security teams moved with precision, transporting Raymond Davis to Lahore Airport under heavy protection, leaving no room for delay or public interference. He was swiftly escorted onto a U.S. aircraft waiting on the runway, every detail planned to prevent exposure or chaos, ensuring his extraction went smoothly. Within hours, he had left Pakistani airspace, heading first to the Middle East and shortly thereafter returning to the United States, a man at the center of an international storm. The speed and secrecy of his departure reflected the urgency, risk, and sensitivity surrounding the case, especially amid a public already inflamed with anger and distrust. U.S. officials exhaled with relief, knowing that any hesitation could have sparked protests, violent incidents, or a diplomatic disaster that might have taken months to repair. For Pakistan, the immediate challenge shifted to managing the nation's reaction, as news of Davis's release spread rapidly and ignited outrage across streets, media, and social platforms. Back in the United States, Davis remained out of public view for months, restricted from commenting on the incident or revealing sensitive details of his mission. Years later, he published a memoir titled The Contractor, offering his perspective on the events and shedding light on his covert role in Pakistan, though much remained classified. The book reignited controversy, prompting renewed debate, criticism, and discussion in both nations over intelligence operations, diplomatic accountability, and the hidden battles waged in the shadows of global politics. The incident severely damaged trust between the intelligence communities, creating a deep rift that would take years of negotiation and careful diplomacy to repair. I felt undermined by covert American activities, convinced that the CIA was building parallel networks in Pakistan without proper coordination or oversight. Meanwhile, the CIA believed Pakistan restricted critical information and limited operational freedom, leaving both sides frustrated, suspicious, and increasingly wary of each other. Public backlash across Pakistan fueled anti-American sentiment, influencing political rhetoric, media narratives, and policy debates in ways that extended far beyond the immediate crisis. Politicians seized the moment to challenge opponents, bolster their positions, and appeal to nationalistic sentiment, turning the incident into a tool for domestic advantage. Many ordinary citizens saw Davis's release as a compromise of justice, leaving a lingering sense of resentment, mistrust, and suspicion that persisted for years. For the United States, the Raymond Davis episode highlighted the extreme complexity of operating in Pakistan, a nation essential for counterterrorism and regional stability. Officials realized the critical importance of improved communication, transparency, and strategic alignment with Pakistani authorities to avoid similar crises. The entire affair served as a stark reminder that intelligence operations, no matter how secretive or carefully executed, always carry significant diplomatic and political risks that can ripple across borders. Today, the Raymond Davis incident remains a powerful symbol of diplomatic tension, intelligence rivalry, and the raw emotions that surface when national pride clashes with secrecy. It is studied by scholars, journalists, and analysts alike, each attempting to understand the delicate intersection of espionage, law, and morality in a world where information is power and trust is fragile. Every interpretation of the case offers a different lens, reflecting the layers of secrecy, suspicion, and hidden agendas that still shroud the truth. The story raises profound questions about sovereignty, accountability, and the invisible wars waged in silence between nations, where the rules are unwritten and the stakes are life and death. It illustrates how a single street incident, a moment of split-second decisions, can ignite consequences that ripple far beyond borders, shaping diplomacy, public opinion, and intelligence operations for years to come. Most importantly, it reminds us that in the world of espionage, truth is rarely clean, simple, or fully visible, And the reality of such operations is often far more complicated than headlines suggest. For the families of the victims, the tragedy remains a living wound, an unhealed scar that no legal settlement or monetary compensation can fully erase. They carry the weight of loss, the memory of lives taken violently, and the knowledge that justice, in the eyes of many, was never truly served. Their grief exists alongside a national conversation, one in which public anger, political maneuvering, and international pressure collided, leaving ordinary citizens questioning whether human life could be valued against diplomacy and covert agendas. For Raymond Davis himself, the incident became a defining chapter of his life, a symbol of the dangerous, invisible world of intelligence work. He embodies both the necessity and peril of covert operations, living proof that in this shadowy realm, skill and survival often outweigh transparency, morality, or public accountability. Yet even as he returned to relative safety, his story remains entwined with controversy, unresolved questions, and ethical debates that continue to divide opinion in Pakistan, the United States, and around the world. The broader implications of the case resonate far beyond one man or one incident. They speak to the fragility of trust between nations, the tensions inherent in covert alliances, and the moral ambiguities that intelligence operations inevitably create. They remind us that diplomacy is fragile, that public sentiment can erupt in ways governments cannot always control, and that the balance between national security and human life is often impossible to navigate cleanly. Ultimately, the Raymond Davis incident is not just a story of guns, diplomacy, or intelligence. It is a human story of fear, power, and consequence. It is a story of nations grappling with their responsibilities, of families grappling with grief, and of a world watching silently as events unfold far beyond public understanding. It forces us to ask uncomfortable questions about justice, accountability, and the cost of secrecy, leaving a lingering truth that is as haunting as it is unresolved, and a lesson that the world of espionage is rarely simple and never without a price.